Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. We are excited to introduce to you our staff, as well as Maryssa Chaplin, who serves on our board of directors. You'll get a chance to hear a little bit from everybody who serves within Greenlight Operation at the staff and one of our board members who has been sacrificially serving now for a couple of years. And our heart behind this is we want you to know and to hear a little bit from the multiple levels of leadership that are represented at Greenlight Operation and who we are, the work that we are doing, and the culture that drives us. And we wanted to highlight one of our board members today to you because a lot of times we have from volunteers to board members and leaders that are not always seen and their work isn't always prevalent, but it's so significant in what we are doing and how we are moving forward. And so, Maryssa, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure.
We are excited to let our audience get to know you a little bit better. We certainly love working with you. And so would you be willing to share just a little bit about your story and how you got connected with Greenlight Operation?
Yeah, certainly.
What that looked like?
Definitely. So I have been a real estate agent for about 13 years now and part of a mother-daughter team, which is so fun. And the first time I heard you speaking about Greenlight, I just knew in my heart immediately when it was time for the restoration house, I just wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be part of finding home. In my real estate journey, that's been a big thing for me in just knowing everyone needs a home. Everyone needs a safe place. And ultimately, as Christians, we know our home is with the Lord, but I love being part of that journey with people here on earth. And so hearing you talk just stirred up a fire in my heart, knowing that it was going to be the right time, that I wanted to be part of finding the restoration home and giving back however I can to that. So the Lord definitely brought this house about in a big way, as we know. But
He did. He really did. And can you share a little bit about how we discovered this house and what that process looked like? And for those who maybe aren't aware, Maryssa was the biggest reason we were actually able to get the home that we are sitting in currently, which for many years was a dream, it was a prayer, and sometimes it feels surreal that we are sitting in the home that we prayed about for many years. But can you share a little of that process?
Well, when we first met, I just took notes on the dream list of what the home was going to be for the women that would stay here. And so I remember just taking those notes, praying through those notes. Yeah. And yet even then, it was probably a couple years before we came under contract. And when we started looking in earnest, we saw several different properties that, did not fit the need of Greenlight for several different reasons. And then when this home came on the market and we saw it, it was almost an immediate yes. It felt like, if I can say that, I mean, it just felt like the Lord's presence was here and the purposes for Greenlight were met in this home. And what was amazing to me at that time was just the fact that this is a historic house. I think back to the stone layers who were building this home. They had no idea. Or maybe they prayed and said, may this foundation be enduring for future generations. And we're the benefit of that hard work and that labor. And I just believe, obviously, God knew this would be the restoration home. And so what an answer to prayer. And so we came under contract. We're under contract for a couple months, getting financing worked out. And then we had closing. And what was amazing was the sellers were such a joy to work with. It honestly was an answer to prayer all around. It was clear they loved the house, that it was a happy home. It was a family home. And so I think that was neat coming into this house, knowing it was already a place for a family atmosphere of growth and life and joy. And it felt that way right away.
It did. You could just see the care and the attention to detail and so many elements of the home. And I think what was just continued confirmation for our team is we had been praying about finding the perfect property that would serve as our restoration home. There, like you said, it was a checklist of items that we were walking through like, there it is, you're checking it off. But we never anticipated when we started this process having a global pandemic that would shut down the real estate market. It greatly impacted some of the fundraising efforts and then even the availability of homes. And I remember when we first launched the idea of the restoration home and the capital campaign, that was 2018 real estate costs versus then what we were seeing at the time we purchased the home. And something we prayed about, that this, if this is the Lord's will, that we would not see competing offers and bids, and that there would just be a very clear indication that this was the home for us. And so we saw the checklist that happened, but then it was just wild. And we know it's not wild. We know God was in it. And to not have any competing offers on this home that was so well cared for and loved. And
honestly, as a real estate agent, that was probably the only one I had not competing that year. And even in the years subsequently, I mean, there's still been continued intense seller's market of more than full price, multiple bids driving up the price, and then it not appraising. God totally cleared that road, and it was nothing to worry about. It was amazing.
It really was. In that, finding the home, but then even the zoning process that we went through, because we weren't sure. We know that in Pennsylvania, it's different for every township as far as, group home living and what that looks like as far as zoning requirements. And, there was a concern in a sense of, are we taking a gamble? Is this going to be approved for zoning with what we're needing? And even that went through an expedited process that we never would have anticipated, where within a month, 2 months, we had the zoning permits that were required. And it's just been amazing to see how God's hand was just not processed.
And so, again, unheard of that way.
It is.
For it to be that quickly.
It is.
Quickly done by.
And I think often, at least for myself, I know, we can get caught up in what's next, what's the stage that we're going into and the growth of Greenlight and opening the home. But I love taking moments like that to reflect on God's goodness, because sometimes we forget and lose sight that look at this miracle that we are sitting in currently, that is being developed and transformed into a restoration home. And even these guys who are now sitting around the table as well and joining the team. I mean, you guys were a prayer as well for us in joining the staff. And we have really dreamt of and prayed into finding individuals that would uphold Greenlight's mission and fulfill some very vital roles. And so we have Michelle, who's serving as a residential program director, who is leading the charge within the restoration home and the direct care team, and Micah, who is helping us as the director of development and funding this massive project that we are in the midst of. Is we know it's more than the brick and mortar. It's the programming. It is the needs of the survivors. That is not cheap. And we want to make sure that we're providing quality care. And so, Maryssa, from the board perspective, can you share a little bit of really some of the heart behind the leadership that a lot of times people don't always get to see at the board level of, what goes into helping to steer and direct Greenlight Operation?
It's a lot of prayer and a lot of surrender. I think one of the biggest prayers I've prayed over the staffing, over the board is, Lord, whose name are you speaking in the rooms of heaven that we need to hear about? And I just look at when we've made some strategic hires, reading those resumes, I just was again astounded at the life experience of both Michelle and Micah, and how that was honestly an answer to a prayer we didn't even know how to pray or were praying. And God exceeded those dreams in each of them. And so from a board perspective, at least for me, it's just prayer of, God, help my vision not to be too narrow. May this truly be a house of dreams. May this be an organization where the Lord's dreams are being met, and we're just being faithful and obedient to help meet them. And in our own capacity, as much as we can give to that, that's what we want to do. And so I think it's just amazing to see those miracles unfurl. And I think in the context of what Greenlight's doing, the homes that these women have lived in have maybe been homes of darkness. And so for this, my prayer is this would be a house of miracles, and that this would be a house of answered prayer, deep joy and peace. And, just to see that started in each of us is amazing. And so I think as we sow into that and we glorify and worship God for that, He's going to sow that even more into this home, into the foundation, the very fabric of the foundation and walls, so that when anyone steps on property, they're immediately sensing God's presence and freedom for themselves as well.
It's the truth. And that is something that is so important to us, where this place is saturated in prayer. And we use that concept a lot of just talking about saturating the walls and everything with just prayer for those names that we don't know that are going to fill this space. And now, we know that we're going to be working with individuals who are lost and hurt and broken. And a lot of times we get asked the question of, okay, Greenlight's a Christian organization. Is it required that residents are believers in order to enter the programming? And they're not. But that's why we're praying. Because we want to see healing and we want them to know the true healer. But certainly not a requirement to join the program. But there's a lot of heart work and there's a lot of a work that is being done on the back end, as much as the program development, as much as the fundraising that's going on. There's a prayer and spiritual component that's also heavily at play. And so, Michelle, you and Maryssa have started meeting together and having some prayer moments. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like and how that's developing even for the future?
Yeah, so Maryssa and I have started meeting, and I really feel very blessed to be able to meet with her. She's a kindred spirit, and so it has been amazing just to come together and start really seeking God on this, because I think it's something that's important for everyone to understand, is that this is going to be God's house. So it's the way that He's envisioned it. It's not any one of ours great ideas. It's really about what He wants and what He purposes. And that's what I really do enjoy about the team here, is that we're all seeking God to find out what that's going to look like. And so we have started praying specifically for different aspects. We just kind of start off praying with what we feel is on our heart. We've prayed for future women that will be coming to stay here, staff, volunteers, and just like you were saying, just that this place will be a place of refuge, that when they come in, they will feel, they may not understand what they're feeling, but they'll feel safe, and that they would start to begin to understand who they really are and who they were made to be. Yeah.
I really look at it as we, and so many who are praying for Greenlight, this is a time for digging deep wells. And if we can dig deep into the bedrock, and break up the dry ground, break up the hard ground, the rocky ground, it takes force and energy, and prayer can do that. It can break through the hardest of hearts. And so, I just have so enjoyed that time with Michelle, and in partnership with how many countless people have been praying for Greenlight. But it is a time of digging deep wells, so that when the women are here, it's just free-flowing springs. I mean, and Pennsylvania in general is blessed with a lot of springs and deep water and good water. And so I'm just praying for that, even spiritually, supernaturally, that this place would be a spring of life, and from it streams would flow. And it's ultimately the Lord that does that.
It absolutely is. And Maryssa, you created something in the restoration home that is a bit symbolic of that, and then some. There's some additional symbolism behind a beautiful mural that we now have in our basement area. Can you share a little bit about what went into that?
It was one of my life dreams to paint a mural, and I've done some small projects in the past, some prophetic painting, that sort of thing. But when this opportunity I was approached with, I just felt like I wanted it to be what the Lord wanted. And so I really prayed for probably longer than I should, because I just didn't yet know where the Lord was taking it. I knew the mural was going to be something to brighten up kind of a dark space, a cold laundry room, which, doesn't necessarily matter. And yet it's an everyday life space. And so I wanted colors that would be calming. And so I picked blues and creams and tans and that sort of thing. And I wanted it to be light because it's a darker space in the lower level. And the Lord then just started giving me almost mental pictures, like an image of this woman there and flowers both above and below her. And I really felt like the Lord was saying, the fragrance of heaven is going to be in this house. And so I felt like God was saying that's represented from the flowers above her, and how that scent would just fall down. And as she is looking upward, then she's starting to bloom, and she is now returning the scent of heaven, the fragrance of heaven, back into the world. And so that was my prayer for the women that would come here, that it would be a place of blooming, a place of the springtime of the soul and new life. And so that was the inspiration I felt like the Lord gave me to it. So as I was painting, I just had worship music, prayer going on that whole time. One of the things that surprised me is it's block walls that I was painting on, much more porous than I anticipated. And so at first I was like, oh, this is going to take a lot more paint. This is going to take a lot more time than I thought. It wasn't as easy brush strokes as I anticipated. But even through that, I felt like the Lord was symbolically using that to say that for some projects, it's not just a quick one coat and we're done. It is more of a saturation. It's more of an intake of really bringing in and pulling in goodness. And then the art will be revealed. And so I felt like that, even for me personally, was a teaching moment as well. So that's just been my continued prayer for this house, that it would be a place of saturation and ultimately blooming of hearts and blooming in the Lord and in the kingdom.
We love that. I love that. And the intentionality and just the symbolism. I know I smile every time I go down there. And like you said, it's in the laundry room, but it's an area that does impact daily life. And there's a reality that there are residents at other shelters that we've connected to that there are some very real fears that many survivors have. Basements can be one of those where it's scary, it's dark, it's not a place that always gives a sense of environmental safety. And so to have something that's bright and that's cheery and brings that sense of warmth, I love it, along with just that side of the just that symbolism. It's a reminder, at least for me, every time I go down there, of just the prayer element of we are surrounded in prayer. These residents who we have yet to meet have already been surrounded in prayer and will continue to be surrounded. And that's a dream I know that we have for within the home. On the staff front is we take time to pray together, to talk through things and intercede in between meetings on, okay, had an idea. All right, is this really what, we're feeling the Lord is guiding and directing us toward? And Michelle, there's opportunity for people to get connected through prayer with Greenlight, whether that is, some of those meeting times in prayer at the restoration home, or it's, we know not everyone can physically come here. What are ways that people can partner and get connected in prayer for Greenlight?
Well, I think that there's some general things that people can be praying for us. And I think right now, one of the biggest things is just praying for wisdom, praying for the funding to go ahead and be able to complete renovations and hire staff, because that's something I get asked as people come through sometimes. How come the doors aren't open yet? And there's so much more that goes into it than just really putting everything in place from the house perspective. It really is much more about also making sure that you have your programming down, creating a safe place, and then recruiting and having unity in your staff before you even open your doors. So we're really wanting this to be more than just a house, just a place for someone to live. We really want this to start repairing and helping people to feel they have a home, that they belong somewhere. So there's a lot of intentionality happening with that. So prayers along that front would be wonderful. People could be praying for that, praying for us to have wisdom, praying for the right staff to come, pray ahead for the women who are coming, that when they are able to come in here, that they would be able to have the resilience to make it past the magic 90-day mark, because we've found that 90 days can be a make or break time for a lot of people. And our prayer is that they would be able to feel comfortable enough and be able to have the resilience to go the distance to receive their healing. And we know this is just one step on the journey as well. So it's just praying for all of those different aspects. We do hope to have a worship and prayer night starting in the next couple of months, maybe monthly, where people can come together and just really start covering the ground with those aspects.
Yeah, we're excited about that potential. And and knowing too that we don't have residents in here yet. And, and knowing just one other thing, I always put this out
Very
there,
good
'cause
point.
I know there's a concern of how safe and secure is this location. It is. We are very selective and careful in who comes. Anybody who comes onto our property has to sign our non-disclosure agreement and some other, documentation. So we are very careful on that side of things. And when we do have residents, so we don't want to discontinue the worship and prayer nights. We will likely move them off site. Of course, this is not going to be anybody else's home other than that of the residents. And we want to respect their private space in the healing and recovery. But I just throw that out there because I know I get asked that question a lot. And I just love it. And Micah, you're coming from a background where you've worked in the corporate world a good bit. And what has stood out to you is you are our newest staff member. What has stood out to you with that leadership and the culture of Greenlight Operation and that element of prayer?
Yeah, so I would say to take a step back on that, I guess. So Maryssa, I think just even you being around this table, like to applaud you just with the time that you've taken to be intentional in prayer and to see that from our board members, to see it from the leadership. This is something that obviously you don't see in corporate America, which is a shame, but it's awesome to see that from a unified front on the leadership team too here with Greenlight Operation, and the time that we take to carve out for that, to be intentional about the future, those that are going to be coming into the home, even how we strategically plan out the year and the things that we need to do to get to the next place. It's never that knee-jerk reaction or that check it off the list or just plan out the year and get it done. It's we're very intentional in seeking godly wisdom and how we do that, how we approach it, and it's been really encouraging to see. So super excited.
We're grateful. And it takes a unified front. And so there's collaboration amongst the team from the leadership all the way, the trickle through effect. But it also isn't just a top heavy organization either, because that's something I love about our board, just that receptive side of things, of that relational investment that's happening too. And so we seek the counsel as well of those who, when we don't have the answer, we are seeking the counsel from professionals in the field. And I know for me, I'm always seeking the counsel of our board on various decisions, but there's just a unified front, and that is something that we so heavily guard and are grateful for our board members who serve just so faithfully with Greenlight. And we thought it would be interesting today for folks to hear and for us to highlight one of our board members, Maryssa, and just to hear some of that behind the scenes story of acquiring the restoration home, what that looked like, and then again giving a little sneak peek of what does a Greenlight team really look like behind the scenes, and what is the cultural side of things. And so we hope that there was some takeaway, and for us, maybe you're like, oh, I'm excited, or something that was shared, that prayer side, I want to get involved. I want to get involved in a worship night, or would love to learn a little bit more about just that leadership. And our team is always open to answering questions and connecting, and we would love to connect, but we do ask for prayer. We ask that if you are a supporter of Greenlight Operation, somebody who gives of their time, of their resources, or maybe you're following along and you're learning about this, be praying for us and the next steps, and also pray about how you can get involved. Everyone sitting around this table would love to help guide and show you. We often say we cannot teach passion, but we can teach the skill sets that come along with what you're desiring to do. And I'm grateful for all the coaches that are represented around this table in the prayer. So thank you for listening in. Thank you, Maryssa, for joining us today. And Micah and Michelle, I'm very grateful for each one of you.